Yeah, what's really fascinating is a few years ago, you would read a CFO resume and the software tools that they might list as having had experience in would be like Oracle, NetSuite, Excel, that would be it. Now there's this whole bevy of application-specific tools, whether it's for FP&A, whether it's for accounting, whether it's for specific elements of accounting, whether it's for the use of artificial intelligence, whether it's using different cloud applications, just the whole movement to the cloud itself. It's just really changed the dialogue, if you will. When I meet a CFO, it's not just, hey, I implemented this ERP system. It's, I implemented this ERP system. We bolted all these other tools onto it, and this was the effect of that. And so it really has, I think in the last 5 years, just really accelerated. And the best CFOs are using cutting edge technology. There's just no question about it. So during this pandemic, it's been really interesting to see the impact on the office of the CFO. One of the big things that has become clear is those companies that have moved their technology to the cloud are going to be in a much better position than those companies that are kind of on-prem. The whole ability to access the accounting system, the data, and having all that be really super secure is just key. So I think this is something that 5 years ago, if this pandemic would have hit, I think companies would have been in a much greater scramble than where we are today. So one of the areas that I speak with CFOs about quite a bit is their ability to accurately predict cash flow. I think it's one of the most difficult things to do. I think it's part art and part science. It's becoming more science than art, which is good because it's probably the most important thing that a CFO needs to do, because you either have to increase sales or you have to cut costs, or you got to go out and raise money. And I can tell you, I've been called countless times on CFO searches when something bad has happened, horribly bad has happened in terms of predicting the cash. And namely what's happened is they've had to get rid of the CFO. So it is king, right? I mean, you have to be able to close the books. You have to be able to be accounting savvy. That's job one of the CFO. But I really think job two is to be predictive and have a strong FP&A function. All of those things are just, kind of ante for the CFO to be in the game. Yeah, it's really interesting as we see companies go from, let's say, nascent revenue to a growth stage where maybe you're going from 15 million to 50 million over a 2-year period versus a company that maybe is 100 million and stable, not really growing very much, just kind of, humming along. I think the type of CFO you need in each one of those evolutionary moments in time really do vary. I also believe that if you're a company that has aspirations to be public, but you're private today, the idea of getting a CFO who has already been a public company CFO is very, very important. You cannot be a public company unless you're predictable. You will not be successful. And so having a CFO who's been through, not necessarily an IPO process, I think putting a lot of emphasis on IPO experience is ill-placed. I think more important is those skills of running a public company and having that demonstrated ability to be predictable. Well, first, I think all CFOs have to get the accounting right. I think that's one. If you don't get the accounting right, then you don't have the right to be in the seat. Job two is then you also have to be extremely competent at FP&A. You have to be able to plan. You need to build a budget and you need to hold people accountable to those plans and budgets. I think the best CFOs are those people who keep the team focused on the strategic plan and don't let people go off and chase shiny objects, because we have a tendency to chase shiny objects. So those are basic qualities. And then I think there are specific qualities such as leadership and business partnership that maybe are a little more nuanced in the sort of top tier CFOs. I think the demands on corporate controllers and FP&A people has really become greater over the last few years as the role of the CFO has expanded. I think these people, even below the CFO, have to become more operational, more business-centric than they've ever had to be in the past. And so I think the way to attract really good talent below the CFO is to show those people how their role is going to be expanded, how they're going to be part of the business, how they're going to be providing solutions to make their business more successful. And I think retaining that talent is exactly in the same bucket, which is rewarding people who actually exhibit those behaviors and promoting those people who get integrated into the business and are not just siloed, green-eyed shade accountant types. The days for those types of people, I think, are behind us. So I think the role of the CFO is going to continue to evolve, and it's going to continue to become more complex. I think the amount of time that CFOs are spending on accounting issues is diminishing. There are certain accounting pronouncements that come out. Like a couple of years ago, we had a whole new revenue recognition redo. And so CFOs were spending a lot of time working with their auditors on how they were going to recognize revenue. But CFOs who are spending more than 10 or 15% of their time on accounting are not spending their time to the best use. And I think that trend is going to continue. I think that one of the implications for that is the type of corporate controller that needs to be hired in order to enable the CFO to be really operational. So we're in very interesting times right now during this global pandemic, and it has very significant impacts on the role of the CFO. We've touched on cash flow and cash flow predictability. If ever cash was king, right now cash is king, because the ability to go out and raise money is going to be severely limited. And what people don't necessarily always understand about that is CFOs maintain the banking relationships, and most companies have some sort of credit line they can pull down. Banks are reluctant to let that cash out the door in a time like this. And so what it really comes back to is relationships. And the best CFOs maintain very good relationships with their sources of money. The other thing is, I think, the whole concept of real estate. Most CFOs have facilities reporting up into their office as well. And I think now we have this work from home situation, and I think strategic decisions, really key, big strategic decisions are going to be getting made about who's going to be coming back to the office, how often, how much space do we need, how do we pull the whole company together if and when we can gather in large groups again. I think there's some really big questions for the office of the CFO and the CFO, him or herself, that they need to be right in the middle of those conversations.